Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. Apologies for yesterday, but I spent most of the day off my 8th floor perch and in various parts of Nairobi. My macro thoughts start with the fact that I still think the dollar has yet to take off. In point of fact, my home thoughts go back to A.A.Milne. If you live to be 100, I want to live to be 100 minus 1 day, so I never have to live without you. We'll be friends forever, won't we, Pooh? Asked Piglet. Even longer, Pooh answered. Promise me you'll always remember you're braver than you believe, and stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. And I'd forgotten how good and uplifting A.A.Milne was. I like this photograph by Diana Matter. Trees in bloom and leafy branches look ghostly, even in colour. And I also like this picture. It was a tweet. A Weiwei has a hashtag Flowers for Freedom tweet, and Henry McAllister has tweeted a photograph of some flowers, saying it's no idea what it is, but it's pretty classy. And I thought the same. And then I rather like the look of this dish from the Grace Restaurant in Chicago, which was awarded a 3rd Michelin star. The dishes certainly look tasty. Political reflections. This photograph of Xi Jinping and Barack Obama caught my attention. It's been interesting watching President Obama's body language at APEC and beyond. And certainly, the repertoire of images that we've been served up with have proven so fascinating to look at. I thought Vladimir looked quite needy of Obama, like somebody who just can't believe what the other person's done to him, and thinks that if he can look him in the eye, he'll change direction. And Barack Obama was studiously avoiding looking him in the eye. Then the image between Xi Jinping and Shinzo Abe, that was an interesting one as well, where they wanted to show constituencies back home. Well, I think Xi Jinping made sure he did, that they were not going to be pushed around. And then the Chinese released a model of the J-31 stealth fighter of AVIC, and it's pictured at the air show in China in Zhuhai on November the 12th. Somebody's written a letter to the Asia Times, and I couldn't agree more with what he's saying. In just one sentence, monumental blunder of throwing Russia back to Asia. General Philip Breedlove, NATO's commander in Europe, said they'd seen columns of Russian equipment, primarily Russian tanks, Russian artillery, air defense systems, and combat troops entering into Ukraine. We do not have a good picture at this time of how many. We agree that there are multiple columns that we have seen, he said in Sofia. Swiftly dismissed as unfounded by Russia's defense ministry, the Kremlin denies that it is involved in the fighting. And then James Bays, who reports for Al Jazeera, said the UN representative had described the situation as being on a knife's edge. And I think clearly it seems that it's going to be a situation of escalation, and that the ebb is normally followed by a much higher surge. I wrote that piece over the weekend about Ouagadougou, and my point was that protests in Burkina Faso achieved escape velocity. Overthrowing incumbents is all about acceleration, momentum, and speed. The country's youth flex their muscles. What's clear is that a very young, well-informed, and very connected African youth demographic. Many characterize this as a demographic dividend, which for beautiful Blaise Compaoré turned into a demographic terminator. And I think it's set to alter the existing equilibrium between the rulers and the subjects, and a rebalancing has begun. Sometimes rebalancings happen in places as far away as Ouagadougou. I'll put up an image of it. Interesting point by Paul Virilio when asked, has this changed the nature of war? Of course, it changes with the logistics of perception. The logistics of perception began by encompassing immediate perception, which is to say that of elevated sights, of the tower, of the telescope. War is waged from high points. The logistics of perception was from the start the geographic logistics of domination from an elevated site. Thus, the field of battle, which is also a field of perception, a theatre of operation, will develop on the level of perception of the tower, of the fortified castle, or on the level of perception of the bombardier. Such is the Second World War and the bombings over Europe. The battlefield is at first local, then it becomes worldwide, and finally global, which is to say expanded to the level of orbit with the invention of video and with reconnaissance satellites. Thus we have a development of the battlefield corresponding to the development of the field of perception, made possible by technical advancements. Successively through the technologies of geometrical optics, that of the telescope, of wave optics, of electro-optics, that of the electromagnetic transmission of a signal in video, and of course computer graphics, that is to say the new multimedia. Henceforth the battlefield is global. It is no longer worldwide in the sense of the First or Second World Wars. It is global in the sense of the planet. For every war implicates the rotundity of the Earth, the sphere, the geosphere. New York Review of Books always has interesting articles, and I've quoted from this before, but I went back to it again yesterday. The creepy new wave of the internet, it's called. The writer and social thinker Jeremy Rifkin, whose consulting firm is working with businesses and governments to hurry this new wave along, the Internet of Things, describes it like this. The Internet of Things will connect everything with everyone in an integrated global network. People, machines, natural resources, production lines, logistics networks, consumption habits, recycling flows, and virtually every other aspect of economic and social life will be linked via sensors and software to the IoT platform, continually feeding big data to every node, businesses, homes, vehicles, moment to moment in real time. Big data in turn will be processed with advanced analytics, transformed into predictive algorithms, programmed into automated systems to improve thermodynamic efficiencies, dramatically increase productivity, reduce the marginal cost of producing and delivering a full range of goods and services to near zero across the entire economy, but at what cost? I like this tweet from Kusan Macharia: the presidents of Zambia and the US, the world has truly changed. The World Health Organization said on Wednesday that 5,160 people had died of Ebola in 8 countries out of 14,098 cases of infection. As I said previously, it's all about the speed of infections, the escape velocity. Currency trading is the world's largest financial market. $5.3 trillion changes hands every day, I'd have thought. Euro, 124.40. Dollar index, 87.80. Japanese yen, 115.75. And a lot of talk that Shinzo Abe is about to call a snap election. Touched 116.10 on November 11th, which was the lowest since October 2007. Swissy 0.9665, pound 157.72, look at that, below 158. Aussie 0.8693, India rupee 61.515. South Korean won nearing 1100 at 1098.95. Rial 256.65. Egyptian pound 715.18. South African rand 1121.57. Dollar index, I'll put up a 3-month chart. I'm bullish the dollar. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3-month chart as well, but I think the euro is headed to 1 parity in 2015. London house prices apparently softened. There is anecdotal evidence that speculation of a so-called mansion tax is having a deleterious impact at the top end of London's market. I think it's topped out. Crude oil trading below $77. $60 looks very much a possibility. On the 13th of October, I said the conditions are optimal for a complete washout a blow-off bottom was the more earthy description, and my time down to as far as $50 a barrel. Markets overshoot. Crude oil does it big time, and any and every model needs to consider such a price outcome. I also put up a 6-month chart. You can see it's been an extraordinary downtrend. Gold 1160.03, I think that's going below 1,000 in 2015. Carlos Lopes, who I follow on Twitter, is a very interesting fellow, and he's saying Africa's economy is set for dramatic changes. He asked to give a snapshot of the current economy. So the current status of the African economy is good, but it's volatile, particularly in the oil and gas sector, which, as you know, accounts for a lot of Africa's combined GDP. He's predicting 6% growth this year. We should not bank too much on the stability in the energy export front, because the shale gas revolution in the US is going to change the rules of the game on energy, particularly oil and gas. The US is not going to need to import energy in the near future. What about increasing consumption in Africa? A rising middle class should lead to more demand for energy. That's my entire point, that Africa's industrialization centers around 3 big characteristics, and one of them is internal markets. The second is the fact that we have renewable energy potentials. Also, our leapfrogging capabilities, technologically speaking, makes the case for a green, clean industrialization. The third is that Africa's entry tickets are its commodities. Talking about agribusiness, and then some interesting comments about Nairobi, which I agree with. I'm very hopeful for Kenya. There is a certain quality of urban, innovative youth interaction that you see in Nairobi. That is why their ICT industry is surprising us all the time with new products. As much as we're all very excited about the experiences of Ethiopia and Rwanda because of the consistency of state engagement in policy, I think in the long run, Kenya has a better combination of factors, even with some lack of coordination now. I think Kenya is going through a low phase that is very temporary. South African all shares up 8.902% this year. The index is above 50,000 as well. Dollar Rand 11.22. Put up a 6-month chart. I think we hit to 12. Egyptian pound still at the same level, 714.98. Egyptian stock market up 37.79%. Second in Africa, only to Dar es Salaam. Nigerian all share bounced 0.88% yesterday. It's down 17.813% year to date, and down 21.06% since the 16th of July. The Nigerian ambassador in the US blasted the US refusal to sell arms. The US government has up till today refused to grant Nigeria's request to purchase lethal equipment that would have brought down the terrorists within a short time, Adefuyo told members of the Washington-based Council on Foreign Relations on Monday night. We find it difficult to understand how and why, in spite of the US presence in Nigeria with their sophisticated military technology, Boko Haram should be expanding and becoming more deadly. On the 10th of November, I wrote, when I said turning to the markets in Africa, the Nigerian Naira and the all-share index have been wagadugu by the collapse in the price of oil. The CEO of the stock exchange says he's not expecting a sell-off. I'm not worried about a full-blown crisis. I'm not expecting to see a sell-off, and indeed we haven't seen a sell-off, he said. The Nigerian stock market has adjusted downward, as you would expect in any OPEC country. Interesting piece in Bloomberg about the oil slide echoes 2008 peg pressure for Nigeria to Saudi. But this is interesting. Ibrahim Muatsu, a spokesman for Nigeria's central bank in Abuja, said last week that no decision had been taken on whether to devalue. So-called 12-month non-deliverable forwards on the Naira weakened to a record 199.50 per dollar on November the 10th. Suggesting traders expect the currency to decline by about 17% in that period. The Ghana Stock Exchange is up 4.801% year to date. Bank of Ghana raised its policy rate to 21%, but they've sort of tightened up the corridor. But however, what they did do, they cut the cash reserve requirement by 1 percentage point, which is an effective easing. Interesting article in Mail and Guardian about why the annoying motorbike taxi is taking over African cities, and then talking about how e-commerce companies like Jumia and Congo love them because that's the way they fulfill orders. In Douala and Lagos, motorbikes outnumber regular minibuses 2-1, but in Kampala it's 6-1, with 7,000 minibuses and about 43,000 boda-bodas. That's astonishing. One unverified estimate put it at an astonishing 300,000 boda-bodas in Kampala. If you didn't watch the interview I did with Bob Collymore after the release of his first half results, please do. That link is on Rich Wrap-Ups under Kenya. Safaricom has rallied 9.87% since releasing first half earnings, and I'll put up a link for that. Kenya shilling is above 90, which is a multi-year low at 90.19. Nairobi all share is up 17.314%, and only 3.1066% off a record high reached on September the 23rd. NSE 20 is 308 points below a 6-year high reached on September the 22nd. I in fact attended the Kenya Airways earnings release this morning briefing, but I've not received the official data as I do this podcast. They reported an after-tax loss of 10.5 billion shillings. They got an income tax credit of 2 billion. Revenues actually rose close to 5% to 56.8 billion. The CEO, Buvi Gunze, and I'll put up a couple of photographs of him, said, "I'm taking over at a time of turbulence." You can say that again. Borrowings and lease obligations spiked to 95.024 billion versus 50.12 billion. New aircraft need to be financed. We finished September with 4.511 billion in the bank, says the Kenya Airways CFO. That's going to be an issue. Passenger traffic, however, rose to 2.1 million in the first half compared with 1.94 million a year earlier, but did not match the additional capacity that was put on. So in the mix, the share price is down, trading nearly down 10%. I think we've got to watch it over the next 48 hours. Kenya's Malindi, a paradise lost. It is not exactly Florence in the Indian Ocean, but there is a distinctly Italian imprint on Malindi, the language, the food, the hotels and the casinos, and even the occasional fugitive from justice. For a generation, Italians in search of the African sun have travelled to Malindi. They have set up business and built hotels with mixed success. One of the most ambitious of them is the colourful tycoon Flavio Briatore, who set up franchises for Benetton and managed the Renault Formula One team. At first glance, Briatore's latest and most ambitious project in Malindi, Billionaire Resort, estimated cost of 500 million shillings, looks deserted in late August. Apart from a small detail at the gates, an assistant manager with a security radio at its reception, and a guest relations officer who briefly struggles with English before smiling and falling silent, the place is empty. From the closed casino, Ludo, that's his casino, to the small shopping centre, where the impossible price tags on extravagant trinkets lie behind the windows of unopened shops, to the vast empty restaurant by the beach with the silverware gleaming on immaculate tablecloths, the resort has the air of an abandoned vaudeville set. The coast has cratered, I'm afraid. I'll put up an image of Rosadas, which is a place in Malindi that we visited on the beach. Nissan is talking of opening or building a Kenya plant if government acts on tariffs and power supply. Mr. Siano, who's the CEO of Uchumi, blamed the drop in the stock price on individuals whom he accuses of having set their sights on taking over the retail chain. The government, which holds a 13.4% stake, announced its commitment to take up its entitlement in the rights issue. According to the Daily Mirror, Samantha Luthwaite, the White Widow, was killed by a sniper in the Ukraine. And if you didn't read my reflections on Westgate and what I intuited was her presence, particularly on the social media channel, where you will remember at one point she sort of mentions that song, I Am Titanium. You just have to go and read the lyrics. And it was quite sort of real time during that Westgate attack. That's when she tweeted it. It really caught my attention, particularly when I read the lyrics. Once again, thank you for stopping by.